Ms. Delabar, are you still there?
I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the patience. Well, I think we were talking about that you had a conversation with Shelley Zimmerman.
Yes, a brief conversation.
And after that, what did Ms. Zimmerman do?
Once I concluded my conversation, she sped off around to the crime scene.
Okay. Now, I may have taken you out of time a little bit. I want to go back. When you were there with the police, well, let me ask you this. Did you go back to the area of the event at all that night?
Yes, I did go back down there to make sure she was okay. But I didn't see her, so I got back in my car and I went home.
Okay. My understanding was that you were present during, that you were questioned by law enforcement to the extent that you've told us about. Were you present during any other witnesses' discussions with law enforcement?
Yes, the young man that was there alone, and then the other couple spoke to the policeman in terms of what they knew.
Okay. I don't want you to tell us precisely what you heard them say, because law enforcement may have already testified to that, but were you there when those people gave their statements to law enforcement?
I was there when they gave their verbal statement, but I was there when they did their written statement.
Okay. I'm going to ask you if you could be a bit more precise. I know that you don't recall names. I believe you said one might have been Jeremy and another one Jonathan. Was that correct?
That's what I think I remember about the names, but again, I'm just not sure.
That's fine. But do you recall, were there three people? I think you said one female and two males, or were there any more than that who gave their verbal statements to law enforcement in your presence?
In my presence, there was a couple, a male and a female, and then there was a gentleman who was by himself.
Okay. Did you give any verbal, except for what we've talked about so far, did you give any verbal or written statements to the police that night?
No, but then he asked me my name, and I gave it to him, and I gave him my phone number.
Okay. And then, and now I think we'll go back to the time where you left the area of the event first, ran into Miss Zimmerman, went back looking for her, didn't find her, and left the second time?
Correct.
Okay. At some point then, did you give statements to law enforcement regarding what you knew or heard about the event?
Yes, there was an FBI agent who left a card on my door and requested I call him, so I called.
Okay.
And he and another agent came to my house and interviewed me.
And you gave them a statement about whatever information they asked you about, I presume?
That is correct.
Okay. At some point, did you have an opportunity to listen to what we call, and have been calling during this trial, the Lauer 911 tape? And for your purposes, that is the tape that has the this voices in the background screaming for help. Have you had an opportunity to listen to that?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell me the circumstances or the setting around the first time that you listened to it?
The first time that I heard it was when it was played on one of the local news channels.
Okay. Were you by yourself or with anyone else?
You know, I don't remember.
Okay. How many times have you listened to the tape?
Besides that time, well, it was played over and over, but I would probably say maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay. Did you hear a voice screaming for help in the background that you were able to recognize or identify?
I heard the voice screaming in the background, and of the two that we are discussing, the deceased Trayvon and George, I've only heard George talk.
Okay. Whose voice do you believe that was in the background screaming for help?
Based on the fact that I've only heard George's voice and it's a light male voice, I would say that it was his.
And by his, you mean whom?
George Zimmerman.
And when you say you've heard him talk, tell us again about how long you've known him?
By that time, it was 2.5 years.
Okay. An opportunity to hear him both speak to you and speak to others in your presence?
That is correct.
Ever hear him yell at a dog or laugh at a joke or anything like that you can recall?
Never heard him yell at the dog. I mean, whatever commands he gave the dog were very, just like a voice talking to someone next to you. But again, from what I heard, he has a light male voice.
Okay. I'm going to ask you then, I'm going to try something that may work. I'm going to show you an exhibit. It states Exhibit 1, and just see if there's any chance that this can be done in a way where you can identify the picture. And then I'm going to have you try and walk us through a location where you may have seen George Zimmerman's truck, okay? So what you're seeing now should be blocked pretty soon by a picture. Can you see that picture?
I can see the picture.
Okay. Let's just see if this works in any form or fashion.
You need to bring it up a little. It's going out of my focus.
Okay. Let me try something else then.
That's better.
Okay. For you, maybe. Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Does that work? Can you at least...
That works.
All right. I'm going to move it a little bit to an area. Okay. Can you describe what is barely on the screen at this point? Can you see that?
The only thing I can see is a blue line, a little bit of grass, and the white border on the picture.
Can you see the pool that's in the center of the photo?
I can.
No, it's not. What do you mean? Your Honor, if I might. It is. Okay. Unless we start talking about mirror images, Your Honor, that's not going to work, so I'll move on to another area of inquiry. Ms. Delegard, I'm going to try to do verbally what we were just going to do visually. And ask you this. You are familiar with the complex, correct?
I am.
Okay. You sort of gave us a walk or a drive-through as to how you entered into the complex. Can you tell me what entrance you came into that night?
I came in the entrance that is directly in front of Bentley Elementary School.
And is that the one that when you drive in, you have the clubhouse immediately in front of you and just to your right?
That is correct.
Okay. From that point, and I know we're testing your memory since you don't live there anymore, from that point, as you're coming in Oregon, I know that you took a sort of back route over to your complex because you took a right on Retreat View Circle, correct? When you first came in.
No. If you say the back route, then you're talking about the part of Oregon that goes up to 46A or Johnny H.E. Thomas.
Yeah, I confused it by saying that. My understanding... One moment, if I might, Your Honor. Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
That's okay.
All right.
I can hear you.
I think I confused my question a moment ago. My understanding was that when you first came into your subdivision, you realized that there was some crime scene tape, correct?
Correct.
As you're coming into the main entrance with the clubhouse off to your right, which way was the crime scene tape from where you were driving in?
To the left or to the east.
Okay. And that would have been, is that the normal way that you would go from that main entrance to your residence? You would go to the left?
No, I would go to the right.
Okay. All right. Now, what I would like to do is start at the Oregon main entrance with the clubhouse on your right. And if you can sort of walk or drive us to the area where you did drive up to get a better view of the area of the crime scene itself.
If I were to drive in to the entrance that was directly across from Altamese Bentley Elementary, I would have made a left rather than a right to go down to where the crime scene was.
Okay. And where on that scene then would you have seen George's truck?
Oh boy, it wasn't even 3/10 of a mile down because it's not that far.
Okay. Do you have a present memory today as to where the truck was?
It was parked on Retreat View Circle, just to the left of where you're talking about the T area was.
Okay. Let me ask it this way. I'm going to refresh your recollection with some testimony potentially. Could the truck have been parked not on Retreat View Circle but on the 2nd Street in, so that, you know the 2nd Street in I'm talking about? So if you don't take...
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, you don't take your first left onto Retreat View Circle, but you take your second left onto Twin Trees? Twin
Trees Lane, I believe it is.
Could that have been the street that you turned down and saw Mr. Zimmerman's truck?
It could have been. All I know is that it was on one of those curves.
Okay, that's okay. Nonetheless, wherever that truck was, it is your testimony that it was directly in front of, maybe a touch off to the right, of what we've identified as Miss Lauer's townhome?
Yes.
Okay. So if we were to use Miss Lauer's townhome as the focal point, you would walk out or look out her front door and look just to your right to see George Zimmerman's truck where it sat that night?
That is correct.
Okay. I have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay.
I'll try and assist as best I can with the compromise of having it this way.
Okay, thank you. Cross?
Ms. Delegard, can you see me all right?
No.
She
Kind
can't
of,
see
sort
you.
of.
It's looking straight up. That's it. That's what she sees.
Okay. Can't see me still?
I can see you through the just beyond the little projector. Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you remember me. I'm Bernie Della Rionda with the State Attorney's Office.
Yes, I do remember
Okay,
you.
great. I just have a few questions and then we'll get you out of here. Okay, or we'll leave you alone, I should say. Since you're yes, ma'am. The bottom line is that day you came into contact with a police officer who told you there was a suspect and a victim, showed you some photographs. You recognized one photograph as George Zimmerman. The other photograph, you didn't know the person. You now know it's Trayvon Martin, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you said you had seen him earlier the day in the retreat at Twin Lakes, correct? Just walking around?
Right.
Okay. And then finally, you were asked about the voice. You mentioned you saw it on TV, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't have a point of reference. All you knew was George Zimmerman's voice, but you had never heard Trayvon Martin's voice, correct?
That is correct. I've never heard his voice.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Any redirect?
A sick woman in her bed who came with us. I think we're done with her and do appreciate her coming.
Okay.
Ms. Delegard,
Yes.
we are done. I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for doing this from your home, and I apologize for the interruption. I hope you feel better.
It's okay. All
Thank you.
right.
May Ms. Dillagard be excused from
Yes.
being recalled?
Excused by the defense, yes.
Okay, you're excused. That means that you don't have to appear again. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, and when you're finished with that, if you'll approach for just one moment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there's some more matters that we need to take care of tonight, and so I'm going to let you go home at this time. It's 4:21 before, as you're starting to get your notepads in order, I'm going to give you my admonitions. During the overnight recess, you're not to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. You're not to read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case. You're not to use any type of an electronic device to get on the internet to do any independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology. And you're not to read or create any emails, tweets, text messages, social networking pages about the case. Do I have your assurances that you will abide by these instructions? Okay, with that, put your notepads face down and follow Deputy Jarvis back into the jury room. And we'll have the jury back at 9 a.m. Please be seated. We're going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we're going to continue on with the animation issue and the proffering of the testimony of Mr. Connor. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, we will be back in court before the jury comes to discuss another issue regarding witness Mr. Donnelly. Court will be in recess for 10 minutes.